Take a moment to rewind the cosmic clock by 12,000 years, back to an era when the world was just waking up from the grip of the last ice age. According to every history textbook you have ever read, human beings at this point were keeping things incredibly simple. We were supposed to be nomadic hunter-gatherers, wandering the landscape in small family bands, chasing mammoths, picking berries, and living in temporary huts made of sticks and animal skins. The established historical tutorial level was very straightforward. First, humans discover agriculture. Second, they settle down in one place. Third, they build cities. And finally, once they have enough food and free time, they invent religion and build temples to cope with their existential dread and their new neighbors. It was a neat, linear, logical progression. But then, in southeastern Turkey, a place called Göbekli Tepe stepped into the spotlight and completely broke the simulation. This place looked at our beautifully constructed timeline of human civilization and said, "That is a very cute theory. Now watch this." Göbekli Tepe is the ultimate historical plot twist, the equivalent of human beings completely skipping the basic tutorial level and jumping straight into the endgame. High-level rating content before they even figured out how to make a clay pot. To truly understand how mind-bending this place is, we have to look back at how modern science almost completely missed it. In the 1960s, a joint anthropological survey team from the University of Chicago and Istanbul University rolled up to a dusty, prominent hill in the Şanlıurfa region. They looked around, noticed a bunch of broken limestone slabs scattered across the surface, and basically concluded that it was nothing more than an abandoned medieval cemetery. They packed up their clipboards and left. To be fair, looking at a 12,000-year-old megalithic masterpiece and dismissing it as a basic medieval graveyard is arguably the greatest historical miscalculation of the 20th century. It is the archaeological equivalent of finding a crashed alien spaceship and assuming it is just a weirdly shaped food truck. For 3 decades, the site sat there, undisturbed, keeping its secrets to itself. Then, in 1994, a German archaeologist named Klaus Schmidt arrived on the scene. Schmidt didn't just see a hill, he saw an anomaly. He noticed that the hill wasn't shaped by natural erosion. It was artificial, a massive, man-made mound, a potbelly hill, which is exactly what Göbekli Tepe means in Turkish. When Schmidt started digging, he didn't just find a few old graves. He uncovered a structural leviathan that would shake the foundations of anthropology forever. What Schmidt and his team uncovered was a series of massive stone circles hidden deep within the earth. At the heart of each circle stood 2 colossal, T-shaped limestone pillars, surrounded by a ring of slightly smaller pillars. Now, when we say massive, we are not talking about some easily manageable backyard landscape rocks. These central pillars stand up to 20 feet tall and weigh as much as 20 metric tons each. Let that sink in for a second. The people who quarried, carved, and erected these monuments did not have wheels. They did not have horses, oxen, or any domesticated beasts of burden. They did not have metal tools, no bronze, no iron, nothing but pure flint and determination. If you wanted to move a 20-ton block of limestone from the nearby quarry to the top of the hill, you couldn't just call a towing company or use a forklift. You needed to gather hundreds of your closest hunter-gatherer buddies, coordinate their movements perfectly, and rely on pure, unadulterated muscle power. It was the ultimate prehistoric version of a group project, except instead of writing a presentation, they were lifting skyscrapers. The sheer scale of social organization required to pull this off is terrifying when you consider that these people supposedly lived in uncoordinated, wandering bands. They were built different, quite literally defying the limitations of their era. The engineering alone is a massive flex, but the artistic craftsmanship takes it to an entirely different level of sophistication. These pillars are not just plain, raw slabs of rock. They are adorned with incredibly detailed, high-relief carvings of wild animals. As you look around the stone circles, you are greeted by a menagerie of menacing creatures: snapping foxes, aggressive scorpions, charging wild boars, coiled snakes, stalking lions, and vultures hovering like omens. This wasn't a peaceful tribute to cute, docile nature. This was an artistic confrontation with the dangerous, untamed wilderness. What is even more fascinating is that the T-shaped pillars themselves are not just pillars, they are highly stylized, abstract human figures. If you look closely at the sides of the stones, you can see carved arms, hands reaching down toward the waist, and even carefully rendered loincloths made of animal skins wrapped around the base. Yet, these massive stone beings have absolutely no faces. They are anonymous, looming, faceless giants staring into the sky. It is as if the creators wanted to represent something human-like, but infinitely grander, operating on a metaphysical plane that transcended the human experience. Long before the concept of organized religion even had a name, these ancient builders were creating the very architecture of the gods. This is where the conventional historical timeline completely shatters into a million pieces. To feed a massive, concentrated labor force of thousands of workers over the weeks, months, or years it took to construct these sanctuaries, you need an absolute mountain of food. According to traditional archaeological dogma, the only way to secure that much food is through organized agriculture by planting fields of grain and managing domesticated herds. But when archaeologists analyzed the thousands of animal bones excavated from the refuse pits at Göbekli Tepe, they found absolutely zero evidence of domesticated animals. There were no cows, no sheep, no goats. Instead, the pits were overflowing with the remains of wild gazelles, wild boars, aurochs, and red deer. The people eating at this site were still actively hunting for their survival. Klaus Schmidt dropped a theoretical truth bomb on the academic world when he proposed his famous thesis. First came the temple, then the city. Humans didn't start farming and then build temples because they had a food surplus. They gathered to build this monumental sacred space first. And because feeding a massive construction crew on wild gazelle was a logistical nightmare, they were forced to innovate. They had to figure out a way to grow grain reliably right there on the spot to keep the project going. In an incredible twist of scientific validation, geneticists have actually traced the origin of modern domesticated einkorn wheat back to the slopes of the Karakata Mountains. Located just a few dozen miles away from Göbekli Tepe, the intense spiritual desire to build this monument literally forced humanity to invent agriculture. They didn't farm to live, they farmed to keep the temple project alive. To make things even weirder, Göbekli Tepe is missing everything that makes a place a home. There are no domestic hearths, no residential walls, no trash heaps of daily living, and absolutely no local water sources. Nobody actually lived here. It wasn't a village, and it certainly wasn't a city. It was a regional mega-hub, a prehistoric pilgrimage site nestled deep within the wilderness of the Fertile Crescent. Imagine people traveling from hundreds of miles away, trekking through untamed landscapes, just to converge on this specific holy hill. They would meet up, pool their resources, lift some ridiculously heavy stones, participate in massive ritualistic feasts, exchange stories, and then disperse back into their hunter-gatherer lives. It was essentially the Burning Man festival of the Stone Age, but with significantly heavier rocks, much higher stakes, and fewer glow sticks. For over a millennium, generation after generation kept coming back to this hill, building circle after circle, maintaining this monumental connection to the cosmos. But the greatest, most frustratingly brilliant mystery of Göbekli Tepe isn't how these ancient people built it, it is how they left it. Around 8000 BC, after utilizing the sanctuary for more than 1,000 years, the people of Göbekli Tepe did something completely incomprehensible. They didn't just pack up their bags and abandon the site to be reclaimed by nature. They didn't get conquered by an invading army that smashed the faceless giants to pieces. Instead, they carefully, systematically, and deliberately buried the entire complex under thousands of tons of dirt, gravel, and refuse. They literally backfilled their own masterwork, transforming their sacred sanctuaries into a completely smooth, artificial hill. Imagine spending centuries constructing a breathtaking cathedral, and then one random Tuesday, your entire community decides to grab shovels and bury it so perfectly that no one would ever know it existed. Why would anyone do this? Was it a ritualistic burial of the old ways because their religious beliefs had evolved? Were they trying to hide their sacred space from an encroaching threat? Or was it the ultimate ancient time capsule, a deliberate message hidden away from the world until humanity was mature enough to dig it up and understand it? It is the ultimate historical rage quit, leaving future archaeologists scratching their heads for millennia to come. Today, only a tiny fraction of Göbekli Tepe has been fully excavated from its intentional earthen grave. Ground-penetrating radar scans have revealed that there are dozens of these stone circles still sleeping silently beneath the soil, waiting to be uncovered. Every single time a shovel hits the dirt at this site, the story of human civilization has to be subtly rewritten. Göbekli Tepe stands as a breathtaking monument to human potential, proving beyond a shadow of a doubt that our ancient ancestors were not just primitive brutes struggling day to day in the dirt. Long before the pyramids of Egypt were even a thought, long before the first stone was placed at Stonehenge, and long before the invention of the wheel or the written word, humanity possessed an unimaginable capacity for cooperation, breathtaking art, and complex abstract thought. They didn't just stumble blindly into the light of civilization. They designed and built the lighthouse themselves. As we look into the faceless stone giants, staring eternally into the Turkish sky, we are reminded that our past is not a settled textbook, but a living, breathing mystery, constantly waiting for the next discovery to completely flip the script.